Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying!
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. How are you? I hope you're all doing very well. On this brand new week, we are putting last week behind us. It didn't happen. No one remembered it. No one saw it. We didn't lose to PSG. That didn't happen. And we didn't lose to Bournemouth. That didn't happen either. We are focusing... I'm not gaslighting you. We are focusing on a new week, and I hope you're all doing very, very well. Welcome back to the main podcast. Thank you all so much for being here. If you are new to us, make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, or you can give us a review and all that good stuff on Apple and Spotify. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm here with my boys, George and Rohan. We've had a bit of a tech issue with Rohan's mic, so apologies. He is on his headphones today for you audiophiles like me, who want good audio. Hello, Rohan. How's your 5K, first and foremost?
It was all right. First 5K in 2 weeks post-holiday, and I went with a different tactic. Instead of going like really hard at the start, I paced myself a bit. And then at the end, I thought, I could actually break my PB here. But I just didn't do enough. But we'll be back next week.
There's an Arsenal reference here somewhere. And George, how are you, good sir?
I am good. Not too bad. I'm glad to be back to the Three Amigos.
Let's do it. He's back after his absence last week. If you missed it, George is now a doctor, and he demands you refer to him as a doctor.
Please don't.
We, of course, that's not true. We are here to talk. We want to talk PSG. Obviously, I spend most of this talking about PSG and the massive at this point, maybe the biggest game of the Emirates era approaching on Wednesday. But we also want to look back at the Bournemouth game. I want to talk Saliba as well and some news that come out about him today, and take your questions as well as always. So strap in for an exciting main podcast. Let's start here. We did lose against Bournemouth as we were recording yesterday on Saturday afternoon at the Emirates, in one of the last Premier League games of the season. 2-1. Bournemouth came from behind to beat us with 2 set-piece goals after a Declan Rice goal. Start with you, George. Overall takes on the game. Obviously, we heard you on the instant reaction, but sort of maybe 24 hours later, how are you feeling about it?
You know, I'm really frustrated in one sense, because I thought the first half, guys, was actually very good. And when you go back in terms of a rewatch, I think had we not had the segment between first to 60 minutes, we would have a very different view of the game. I'd be very positive as far as what I saw, especially in terms of central progression. There's been this thing lately where I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter critique the central progression problems of Arsenal, and I just fundamentally don't necessarily agree with those being the takes. Like, one of my main issues, and even with Bournemouth, again, my frustration had to do with in transition, after we've broken the press and effectively having some difficult chances converted, versus breaking the press and generating easy chances in transition. That's been the biggest thing for me that Arsenal have lacked. And it even showed against Bournemouth. I felt the amount of times that we were able to cut open Bournemouth from their initial press, there was a problem. And Areola had to fix it, at halftime. However, the forwards were wasteful. And then once we got it to the middle third, and I think in terms of for some of our actions, you're looking at Trossard, you're looking at Thomas Partey sometimes, I felt were the most secure in the middle of the park. But generally speaking, the issues were more up top for me than they were in the first phase. And I actually got very excited as far as the big issues I saw at PSG. There were clear solutions that I saw in Bournemouth to those direct problems and buildup that we had, especially in the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes of PSG. So I was very happy. And then it got to a point where you could really segment at around 55 to 60th minute, the entire team dropped. Then it coincided with the Declan Rice subs, the Martinelli, and the Saka subs. And there's a conversation that I hope we will have actually, in terms of drawing and losing game states. Because I was on the instant reaction. I'd love to get like Rohan's thoughts when we get to that section. But I have been a big proponent that it is as much tactics as it is momentum or game tempo. The speed to which we play and our play seems to really decline when we approach those game states. And that's been the biggest driver for our poor form in those game states for me, as opposed to like maybe a structural issue that we somehow change or the boys start to do, but that leaks into like future topics. But as a whole,
yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, Bournemouth was a frustrating day, mate, because it was seeing the same weaknesses, and fundamentally we didn't rest. And I think that only really works when you get a win and when you want to build momentum, because I think people have kind of forgot, but we have some pretty tough games in the Premier League coming up. You can't throw away a league game against Bournemouth and then expect to do well against Liverpool and Newcastle, which, by the way, we do need points. We need 3 points to secure Champions League, but I'm not somebody that wants us to drop down to 4th in the pursuit of the Champions League. This is within our control to finish strong, and I think we don't have an easy schedule in the league. So I'm more disappointed with the fact that I felt we threw away some points here when we shouldn't have.
Yeah, Rohan, that puts us 3 to play. We are 15 points behind Liverpool with 67 points and they're 82. City are behind us, exactly the same amount of play for everyone in the top 5 now. So City are on 64, Newcastle 1 behind on 63, and Chelsea on the same at 63. Chelsea now only 4 points behind us in 5th. It's massively compacted. Just before we get into the game, are you as worried as I am about this potentially turning into a 3rd, a 4th, a maybe even, who knows, 5th season? Because it's looking like a real reality that we're going to have to start at least having the conversation and considering what that would mean, what that would look like. I think I haven't wanted to look over our shoulder at all, because I just thought, well, of course we're going to come second with the second best team in the league. But you look at that table and you can't ignore it.
You and me, mate, like I've been saying for weeks, we'll get second, it's fine. The other teams aren't consistent enough. And now Man City have started to pull together a little bit of a run. They've got favourable fixtures as well. And it's really frustrating because, you know, I wasn't on the main pod post Crystal Palace. And for me, that was the most infuriating game out of them all in terms of, like, I don't mind dropping points, don't mind losing games of football. You're always upset. But when it's like a lack of fight, desire, commitment, that's when it's not good enough. And we've had some really favourable games to really secure second, and now we're in a situation like you alluded to. It's, if you're a betting man, you're not putting your money on Arsenal right now to finish second, that's for sure. And we'll be fine for Champions League, but I'm with George. I don't sit in the camp of, second is the same as third, second is the same as 4th. It all means Champions League football. But it's the way that it's happened. It's been in our control, and we're letting it slip. You know, I've always been of the opinion, if you're not going to win the league, be the best of the rest. And right now we're struggling for that, because Liverpool and Anfield, after what we're going to be looking to achieve against PSG, then Newcastle, which has always been a difficult game for us. Luckily, we have got Southampton on the final day, which is just you'd expect that to be cash money. But yeah, yeah, you would. But it is infuriating. I agree with George as well in terms of the Bournemouth game. I think the first 65 minutes was really good. Bournemouth certainly had their moments where they almost got in. I think Ben looks really off the pace, and I think that's okay given the context behind him and the injuries, but he just looks a yard short. But I think when we're looking at, I felt for me the Bournemouth game would be good for us going into the PSG game, because as much as there are obviously differences between Bournemouth and PSG and how they play, there are a lot of similarities in terms of a dynamic front line. They press really hard and they make you run. That's exactly what PSG are going to look to achieve on Wednesday. So I felt this would be good preparation for us. And I actually like the things that we did in the first 65 minutes. Now, we've spoken a lot about Martin Odigard and his season and the problems, but I thought he had a really good first 60 minutes. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but he was roaming horizontally quite a lot. And that came from the solution of when Lewis Cook was jumping to Thomas Partey, which is their pivot player, when Tyler Adams was jumping to Miles Lewis-Skelly, the space was there for Odegaard to drift, to be the escape. And then we were out. And then there were the problems of in the final third. I thought, again, there's a wider discussion here of Arsenal in terms of playing their food. I did something with George, Data George before. And statistically, Arsenal, they take more touches per shot in the final third than any other team in the Premier League. And it's the same in box situations as well. And there's this frustration where we could have killed the game before what transpired. And we'll get into what transpired in terms of this pattern that has been occurring. But yeah, I think it is frustrating, because I think this game could have been looked upon very differently when we're looking at the first 65 minutes. But ultimately, when you have that final spell, it kind of undoes all the good work that you did in the game. So, yeah. Yeah.
I think naturally for me, maybe I want to have the conversation, but I don't think it's appropriate now, because we've still got this huge game on the horizon about Arteta and the Premier League and, you know, this fall away. But I think we'll have time to do it. So to be clear, we're not shying away from it. I think I just want to focus on this game. But for me, my head's going, I think there's a wider discussion here for sure about that sort of stuff, and we'll come to sort of points on losing positions, etc. Maybe just off the back of it. But let's dive in on the Bournemouth game itself. Let's start with the goal. I thought Rice, if we need any encouragement for PSG, he is it for me. He was absolutely fantastic in that game, physically, mentally, tactically, like just nipping in ahead. He looked a yard sharper, a yard quicker, even at this stage of the season, even in the Premier League, in the context of all these sorts of other things. For me, I look at a player like him and a performance like that against Bournemouth in the context that we're giving, and I go, that's a guy that I want to build around. And I just thought he was extraordinary. But his goal was an example of what was so great about us potentially on the day, as you guys are both alluding to, which is weirdly how we haven't been playing when we have had a false nine this season at times, or have with Trossard, which is runs from deep. And I did think our attacking distances looked a lot better, especially in that first half. I mentioned this on the instant reaction, but I think because we weren't stepping on so much, it gave us a little bit more room in the final third to manoeuvre, and it allowed those runs to really take place and really take hold. I also thought, and because in fairness we spent time critiquing him, I thought Martin Odigard had a fantastic first half. He really did. He showed us what he could do, as you mentioned, Rohan, with a bit of space and with a little bit of time. And I thought his role in the goal was brilliant. So yeah, I maybe George, talk us through what you made of that goal.
I think number one, when I look at what Martin Odigard could be and the differences, I remember talking about this as far back as 8 months ago. We said Odigard cheating to the left, Odigard being able to go into the middle third, being a middle third operator. And one of my favorite things about this Martin Odigard decision was in transition, an early decision. That I think is not being spoken about enough, because it's all well and good to criticize Martin Odigard for not having the legs that other players do. And that's never been, whilst I'm frustrated that we don't have another option like that in our squad, and we sold the only one that had that option in the squad and we never replaced it. That's never been my issue with Martin Odigard. It has been when he's in the final third, far too often do we see delays in his release, the release of the pass. And here, when he's breaking through, it's a smart spot. We know he can do this, but it's an early pass decision, and it gives Declan Rice and the one running into the space enough time to make a decision. And it's actually a pass that's very good in terms of it's with the right pace, it's with the right idea, and it sends a message to take it on. It's not a searching ball that's out wide or too wide for Bukayo Saka to take under control in the first step. It is a great pass, and he is capable of this. This is the Martin Odigard that I feel when you look at his potential in the number 10 position. I've always maintained it is a decision-making and release problem, not a skill gap for Martin Odigard. And I think that if he is going to be in this new phase Arsenal that we suspect to see, these kind of decisions and plays are stuff that we'll have to see more of. Not the first half really brilliant middle third, because we're recruiting somebody for that. But if he's to survive and adapt in this team, he's got to be able to drift left. He's got to be able to access different areas of the pitch and release the ball in transition early because of his physical faults there. And that's no problem. We need that. We need some of that creativity and that passing and that passing empathy in the final third, because we don't have enough of that. So it was a great goal made. It was great. And it was really well worked from even beyond getting it to Odigard to begin with. Like I believe that's actually gotten under the radar. Like it was a very free flowing move that for all the people that want to critique Arsenal for not being entertaining, I thought that goal was really purposeful, really cut through Bournemouth quick. And Odigard makes a great decision and Declan finishes with ease, to be honest.
It was nice. A goal on the half turn from Martin Odegaard, which we've been calling for. I think that's kind of, just to jump off that point, like I think a lot of the frustration with him this season is we know he can do that. Like we know he can do that. And I think it's that thing of, kids at school of kind of, on their school report, it's like, what's more annoying is I know if you applied yourself, it's that same thing. And I think when you know that is there, it kind of makes it more annoying when it isn't. But credit to him because he did that. But then, Rohan, we conceded 2 set pieces. Arsenal have conceded 38.7% of their goals through set pieces. I think, to be fair, I think this includes sort of second phase off set pieces, not exactly direct set pieces, but from around set pieces, according to Opta Analyst. In fairness, we have to be clear, Liverpool are third at 28.1%. I think when you concede very few goals, the goals you do concede, a lot of them are going to be off set pieces. So I think that makes it sound a little bit worse than it is. But yeah, I mean, it is a concern. We saw 2 that happened. One from Dean Huijsen from the throw-in, and the one from Evan Nilsson from the corner, I think it was. Yeah, from the corner. Explain. I don't think I have a particular answer for this. As I said in the instant reaction,
it's a trend, isn't it?
It's a trend. I don't quite understand it, and it's a concern and something we need to highlight.
So last season, I think we conceded 14 goals from set pieces. This season, again, a large share of our goals conceded are coming from set pieces. And actually, if you go and look back at every single game that we've played this season, there've been a lot of moments where we've been quite fortunate to not concede from set pieces as well. And just like you, like I need to research more on set pieces. I just don't know enough about them. And sometimes it's just good to say you don't know. But there is a trend here, and it's a pattern. And I've always spoke so highly of Nicholas Jova because of the work that he's done in terms of our attacking set pieces. But we have to be fair and we have to be objective, and it's not good enough. And I don't think this is just a Gabriel and Kai Havertz thing, because like I've alluded to, we conceded a lot of set pieces last season as well. There's a wider problem here, and when it is a trend and it's a pattern, we need to look at it. And I do find it concerning because I don't know about you guys, every time the opposition has a corner, I feel a little bit nervous. And even in the PSG game, I think they had, from crosses or from a few corners they did have, they got first contact 4 or 5 times. So this is something that it can hurt us, and it is hurting us. Bournemouth didn't score from open play, and I am a little bit worried about it because, these are the fine margins where we talk about the fine margins going our way and how we do that through the set pieces that we have in attacking situations. But likewise, the opposition are gaining significant joy from it, and I don't have an answer to it right now. But it's something that has to be looked at.
Yeah, because I definitely have read into this a bit, and I did a really super nerdy set piece thing earlier with the Cannon Pod about our set pieces. And one of the first things that you notice as far as defending set pieces, and when you're talking about the first contact, Rohan, that's the man-to-man hybrid aspect of set pieces, where we combine both a zonal and man-to-man approach, which is emphasized even in our offensive set pieces. But as far as defending, there is the first man, which is typically Kai Havertz. And if you look across the league, Kai Havertz is one of the most effective first phase or first touch players in defending set pieces. The amount of headers that he wins off the first near post is incredible. It's actually one of the best in the league. So without having him, it's definitely an impact. And of course, Gabriel is one of 3 typically zonal markings that we employ that are a little bit deeper. And we know what he is as far as an aerial presence. One of the things that I've noticed, however, though, is we've slightly lost our focus in terms of following runs, that we seem to be behind these markers a lot more than we do when it's kind of into a zone. I don't find that we lose our aerial battles when we're there, but we're not getting there quick enough. And so the first touch is happening with our opposition a little bit more. Now, in terms of trainability, how do you improve those things? I mean, look, it's about running routines a little bit more. It's about understanding, listen, you need to anticipate the run going this way. But I mean, teams can do tactics too, just as much as we do them with Nicholas Jover. And so you're going to get to a point in which it is a 1v1 battle. And I find the people we have left in our defensive unit, let's talk about it, right? Urian Timber, I think he's competent aerially. I wouldn't call him somebody that's dominant over a 6'3", 6'4" striker that's able to consistently do it. He's somebody that can put you off, but I wouldn't call it dominant. I'd say the same about Miles. Miles is a very physical player, but similar to Timber, he's not going to have the height advantage to really dominate you in that same way. Then we go to our center back pairing. William Saliba, I've said, rarely has very many issues, but there are 2 issues that William Saliba has always had back to when I was the Saliba season account. It is, number 1, judging the flight of the ball from wide crosses has been an issue for William Saliba since he was a young boy. That is something that I feel he struggles with. And then you pair it with a Jakub Kivior, who I feel, again, is passable in an aerial sense, but is still not dominant. And I think when you look at that back line, we're missing the first contact Havertz, and there's nobody in our front line, by the way, bar Mikel Merino, who is as equally dominant aerially that you could say. And for me, he is just somebody that competes a little bit better running into a duel. This is even seen as far as the switch with PSG in a different sense. But this to me is why he struggles statically in an aerial duel a little bit more. And so I have a look at the collection that we've got right now. There is a weakness aerially that I'm finding, but it's a bit more having more focus in the 1v1 matchup. It's a bit more understanding that, okay, fine, you might be late to something, but learning when to jump, when to compete, and when to throw off your opposition whilst in the air are all things you can do, even if aerial dominance is not your priority, is not your strength. And I think those are things that we can maybe do a little bit better, especially enacting our physicality in the jump, putting people off. You don't need to be 6'4" to win every duel. And, you know, some of the best aerial duelers as far as center backs go, they don't have to be 6'5", 6'6". We've seen it in the past. And, you know, I look at, for example, Thiago Silva, really dominant player in the past with duels, not somebody who is, I would say, a Peter Crouch in height. You don't need height to exact dominance. But what he was brilliant at is in competing for the duel, he was able to just not foul, but slightly nudge to put you off the path. And that's really all you need if you are somebody that doesn't have the height advantage that some of these other center backs go. So for me, that's been the biggest issue, being late to the first contact and then are dealing with that second contact. Look, it could be better, but you stop the first ball in, you don't have as much of a chance and a variation in the mixer, so to speak, if you want to be a little bit of a yurda.
Yurda. Yeah, I think the collective. I think I understand like the sort of the personnel we have is obviously a massive part of this picture. It is, and I think you've broken it down really well there in terms of also the other stuff that we can be looking at. I'd be interested though because. I mean, there's people who really, really look at the sort of the tiny, minute details in this stuff, and if there is people, I think there's like that set piece sicko guy, but there's people who go, no disrespect to him, but there's some incredible set piece analysis I see, and I go, I just wouldn't even go there, and I wonder if you looked into that sort of stuff, like what would happen. So yeah, it's really fascinating. It's ultimately something that is a really specialist, and hopefully we can fix it because Jova has such a good record in that, and he's got a set piece mural, so he's got to fix it. We did have a game, another game where we couldn't come from behind. We went ahead and then we came back, or we certainly couldn't come from behind when we went down there. Rohan, you have some numbers, I believe, that you wanted to read out. Why don't you give us those?
I mean, we spoke about this quite a while. Every single time we found ourselves in this situation, we've mentioned it on the pod, and it is something that continues to be there. And I always like to go back to the 22-23 season because that was obviously when Arsenal began the rise of competing for a title. And in that season, I'm looking at specifically game states in which we are losing or ones in which we've relinquished the lead. So in the 22-23 season, faced 19 games, 8 wins, 5 draws, and 6 defeats, giving us a win percentage in these game states of 42.1%. So that's the 22-23 season. Last season,
your favourite.
Last season, 14 games, 5 wins, 4 draws, 5 defeats, a win percentage of 35.7%. This season, we faced more situations where we found ourselves in these unfavourable game states. 21 games, 6 wins, 11 draws, 4 defeats, giving us a win percentage of 28.6%. So there's a drop-off every single season. Now, there are obviously caveats with the injuries, the red cards, some of the decisions that we've had. I go back, like, for example, Brighton away, I don't criticise the team after what happened there, because if you look at the team that we put out there was a sickness bug that was going around. That was always going to be a game of really fine margins. But there have been games like, Saturday for listeners today, but in which it just feels there's not that same urgency, there's not that same speed of play, there's not that same thrust after we go a goal down or we're in these losing game states. And that's why I go back to the 22-23 season, where there was always that belief where we went a goal down. Like, you go all the way back to the early in the season of that campaign, losing against Fulham, losing against Man United, against Liverpool, getting pegged back twice. There was that belief, and I felt like it was the tempo of our play in which was the difference there. Right now, it feels like, again, we're trying to manufacture the perfect move, and that leads to us not having as many shots on goal. I mean, the keepers very rarely get tested in these scenarios, and that for me is a wider concern. And it's not just down on the fact that we've had players missing. There is something tactical there, and I do think that there is an element of not being brave enough, not being not looking to put ourselves in the ascendancy there, that is really hurting us. You know, I remember before in that 22-23 campaign, Mikel would bring on 2 strikers and they played them as a pair, as an out-and-out pair, and it gave us a lot of success. Whether it was Eddie and Nketiah, you know, even though it was Eddie and Nketiah and players like that, we found significant success in these scenarios, and we're not doing that. Like I asked you two, when we go a goal down, do you have the belief that we get back in it? Because I don't, and that is a concern.
I'd love to know like what you guys feel is like the big tactical issue. Like I know on the instant reaction, one of my big things and I've critiqued is the game tempo, because when you start to look even at those changes with Eddie and Nketiah and those multiple strikers, how much more vertical did Arsenal become in those moments excessively? And when I'm having a look at like, you know, what is the issue and why I feel like we won't score, it's because the tempo of our possession is so stale. It's not even just the fact that like there's different patterns that we're not seeing. I think even if we saw the same patterns but with an up tempo, we would see more success. For me, it's just the tempo of our play significantly goes down, and I don't see enough players that can change it. And what do Bournemouth do, by the way, in the second half in order to really change their intensity? Bring on Antoine Semenyo. What is he? He is the definition of
good player.
Well, he's a good player for sure, but in terms of even in transition, he's somebody that speeds the possession value of Bournemouth's play. He's somebody that you can go long with to create transitions and create more effective shots, but also when dribbling, he is somebody that is vertical, that is going to go to goal pretty much consistently. He won't recycle. He's very vertical in his play. And I think that, for me, that power, that thrust, whatever you want to call it, the engine and the ability to really turn a game from being slow traffic to freeway traffic is something that Arsenal don't do well enough. And I think that's the chaos ball that people say, oh, I like this aspect of Liverpool. No, it's speed of tempo and making sure that you're going to facilitate more transitions. It's going to be that you're going to go vertical more than you are going to recycle, and really turn the switch about when they decide to make it a basketball game. It's not so much that we lack the capacity to, it's that we lack the ability to go from slow to fast, from fast to slow. We don't control that tempo well enough as a team.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. I have to caveat with this game. You know, I look at the bench and I think it's very, very, you know, people are calling for, you know, oh, come on, why can't he change the game from the bench? Well, who's there? Like, who has he got? I think that's a big thing, and has been a big thing at points this season with the injuries. That's there, as Rohan's alluded to. There's, you know, this why can't we come from behind to fix games things, I don't think has, for me personally, doesn't have one answer. I think that, George, that thing you described yesterday, it was maybe really apparent against Bournemouth and it's a big game model issue. But that's, for me, it's been an issue more wider than, you know, turning games round. It's a really odd thing. And I think we have to come to the mental side of things. It feels like belief. It really does feel like we just don't believe we can turn games around. And that may feel a little bit sort of, you know, just sort of slightly, you know, very keen analysis. But I do believe, I look at those players and I watch them play. I don't think, you know, a Bukayo Saka or you know, maybe outside of maybe a Declan Rice and a Bukayo Saka, many of those players think, yeah, we can turn this, or that we even can. I also think it's difficult because there's the wider context and there's the Bournemouth game specifically. And I do think in the Bournemouth game, ultimately, we have to factor in that the game we're about to come to analyse is about to happen. We have to say that. Like, there is a 1 or 2% that is going to be off. But in the Premier League, that's huge.
I think there's a massive element to that. And that's kind of like, you know, the Palace game as well, where for me, I don't agree with this idea of kind of like saving your legs because you don't want to get injured in the biggest game the Emirates has seen, right, in the PSG. That's what it felt like against Palace. I don't like that because I think I'm a very big believer of momentum. You know, winning games of football allows you to go into the next game with more confidence and belief. It doesn't necessarily always happen. Like we beat Real Madrid, we smashed Real Madrid on the back of draws against Everton and Brentford. But I do think that there's a massive element to that, and I do agree with that. I think that there was an element of kind of like saving your legs. You know, we've got PSG. But there is an interesting thing about the belief point that you mentioned there, because like if Arsenal had played that 65 minutes and translated that into the final 25 minutes, I'm adamant we would have won the game. Like, adamant, because the amount of chances we had in that second half as well with Saka, who had a few really good ones as well. That's what it is sometimes. And I feel like that maybe there is something there in terms of just the belief and reacting to adversity. And it's yeah.
and you get into a rhythm of doing it as well. If you do it consistently, as we have not done this season, you just start to think, we can turn this around. Like Liverpool, I mean, how many times have Liverpool turned, sorry to use them, but how many times have they turned around a 1-1 or a 0-0 at half time? They've gone out there and said, no, we'll win this. And there's an arrogance to them to say we can do that. And players like Trent and Salah, they know they can do that. And I don't know if we have those guys.
It's a really interesting balance as well, because like the 22-23 season, there was the criticism of Arsenal. It wasn't a good thing, Arsenal always going behind and coming back and winning. Yes, it's great in the moment, like the Bournemouth and the Aston Villas, etc. But if you keep doing that, it's not sustainable. You are eventually going to find yourself unstuck. But now we've gone into the situation like last season, for example. We very rarely found ourselves in that sort of game state because we were always winning, especially in that second half of the season.
Yeah.
But as Mikel alluded to, and we mentioned it a few times, like before the season started, there was that interview that he did with the Men in Blazers where he mentioned like he wants to build this Arsenal team in which not on its best day, it can still win and be better than the opponent. And we've not quite cracked that yet, because if you go and look at the campaigns, how many times have Arsenal scanned results? There's not many. It feels like we have to perform at a decent baseline for us to get the result. Once we don't hit that baseline, sometimes we find ourselves in a spot of bother.
And it translates to the crowd. And I think it comes back to that as well. Like you could, if you took a straw poll at 75 minutes, let's say, of everyone in the Emirates crowd yesterday, are we going to turn this round? Almost everyone would have said unlikely. And I think that translates to the players, and it really does. Look, there's a lot of, in my mind, there's a lot of offshoots of this conversation. Why this is happening, all that sort of stuff. We have so much time post PSG potentially, but hopefully not, to sort of do a review of why this is all happening. So let's not sort of get too stuck there. Let's move forward to the PSG game. Say again.
Is there a pun there? Do I?
Probably.
Intended.
Let's move forward to Paris Saint-Germain. It's such a huge game there on Wednesday at the Parc des Princes. Absolutely huge. I really hate to put pressure on these types of games, but I can't think of a bigger game in my lifetime watching Arsenal. Like, the 2006 Champions League final, but I was 9, so I don't really, I enjoyed it, but I didn't really know what it meant. As an adult fan, I can't think of a game that meant more to Arsenal. Just starting there, George, like in terms of the magnitude of the game, where does this rank for you?
It's even more important in the context of this season, I would say, because I felt like in the last couple of years, at the end of the day, Arsenal and our fans are looking for a takeoff point from Mikel. The reason why we feel like it's the biggest one in, say, a decade is because, I could have said similar to maybe even Villarreal at the time against the Europa League, where I was like, that's a major European trophy. I'm looking for a takeoff point where I've trusted the process, so to speak. I've trusted Mikel, and I've been an advocate of that. And then there are fans that are saying, okay, well, I need the trophies to back it up. I need the point to say that we've arrived. And I think Arsenal fans for the better part of a decade have been battling relevancy, haven't we? We just have not been good enough as a club in terms of winning the major honors. And so when we're getting to a point in which we see ourselves having some more than just significant chances, we literally factually have at least 25% chance to win a major honor that we haven't done in the history of our club. It becomes, even when you describe it that way, it's important. And then when you describe it in the context of this season, having dropped to be almost 15 points behind Liverpool, to essentially have a look at our league campaign from the start of January 2025 to now, and some of the disappointments that we've had finishing this season, you had all those things. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know what? I am not a fan of it, if I'm really being honest, because I think we've put ourselves in this position with our form in the league, personally. And I'm really not a fan of it because, look, it gives you the opportunity to rise, but it makes the game bigger than what it is. And when you have that with a young team, which we are a young team, I worry about where that swing can go. It can be really powerful as a galvanizing aspect, but it can be a really daunting hill that you say, wow, can I live up to that task? Because I've not done it yet before. And by the way, Arsenal and Mikel Arteta hasn't. If I'm being very fair, every single year we have ultimately failed at the final hurdle. And to build it up to be this thing where, are you becoming a pattern? Like, I think a negative outcome to this game is going to spark a very difficult situation within the fan base as far as this process and looking back and retrospective outcome analysis and maybe outcome bias towards what has Mikel achieved with this club and what is he capable of, and putting a ceiling on the team and the manager. And look, I think we've put ourselves there. I'll be honest. The only thing that I'll say as far as the whole big thing on PSG is I really think tactically we look at it, it's a completely different game as far as what Arsenal are able to do in possession and out of possession. But in terms of maybe the mentality, and when you're looking at just the soft factor approach about how big this means for club and for the manager himself, yeah, I would say this is the biggest point in his career. Like he got over the hump of surviving that like 4-month period when, Josh and the KSC ownership had backed him. That was a big moment for me in his Arsenal career. He survived that. I really do feel, as crazy as it sounds, it could get to similar levels of toxicity because of everybody had anticipated this was the year to win. And then you look at the fall off and they say, well, that's not justifiable. The way you guys acted as an ownership in January and even in the summer, it's going to get, for me, very toxic. And I'm nervous about us building it up to an occasion like this, because as a coach, or like my mentality, I know people don't want to hear it, but it really is just another game of football. It really is, for me. You believe in your principles, we will be successful. But part of the reason that we lost PSG was because we sacrificed our principles, in my opinion.
It should be just another game of football, but I think, and Rohan, I always try and separate out, what the fans are thinking and expecting, and it's going to get toxic in the fans, and how much that actually affects the reality of the game. That really, really affects things. But I think it does. I really think this does, because I think everyone on that pitch, because Kai Havertz has obviously played a Champions League final. So probably not for him, but obviously he won't be there. So I think everyone on that pitch, it's probably the biggest club game they've ever played. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure maybe there's some. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So maybe apart from Partey, but pretty much everyone on that pitch, it's the biggest club game they've ever played. It's definitely the biggest game of Mikel Arteta's career at Arsenal, 100%. And as George was kind of alluding to, we've allowed it to build to that point. So it's not just the fans thinking, what has the manager done? It's the players going, okay, this is our moment to basically, are we all bark and no bite? And we have kind of allowed it to get to that point. It is theoretically just another game of football, but it isn't, and I don't think it is just for the players. I mean, similar question for you. Where do you put this? Where do you rank this? How you feeling ahead of this? Because I hate that I'm gonna feel, just as a fan, and whether people, I'm just another fan. So what is my opinion? But I know I will feel so differently about this season, basically depending on one game, which I hate, because I'm going to look, if we get through, I'm going to look back and go, well, we had an injury hit campaign, but we still got to the Champions League final, and maybe we've gone to win it, whatever. Even getting to the final, I think we'll feel like because anything could happen in the final, and if we didn't win it, it's like, but we had that experience. But not winning that game is going to put such a tint on that season, and I hate it, but it's true for me, at least.
It's not just the game. Arsenal fans expect to win this. That's the dangerous thing. That's the danger. Whenever we've been in this situation in which we expect to win the final, or forget about the semi-final that we have to get through, get to the final, we have to win it. If we don't win this competition, it is going to get very toxic. I don't agree to it, but as we've mentioned many times, this was our year, after what Mikel had mentioned in that post-match interview against Everton last season. Don't sit on this. I think he mentioned, we have to go for more. And now we've got to this moment, especially with what Liverpool have done in the Premier League. Obviously, we've given the context, etc. But at baseline, they've won the league. That was not expected. If Man City weren't going to win the league, everyone fully expected Arsenal to be there to take it. We haven't done that. We've had some really poor performances in the English Cups, and now we're in this moment where I can't lie to you, I'm really nervous, because this means a lot. I honestly don't care what other fans say. To be honest, I want this so much. This champ, I'm starving, and it's interesting because the players will feel it as well. They're not stupid. They see everything.
Yeah.
They absolutely do. They probably see stuff of what they probably see stuff of. It's there for them to see. And
well, and this is kind of what I'm alluding to. Is frankly, who cares if social media gets toxic? Like, who cares? What matters is what the players take away from this, and this will impact their sort of, I think, belief in this project. This will impact their belief at this level. This will impact maybe transfer plans in the summer. This has real implications. It's not just so and so on X is going to be annoyed. Who cares? This is going to really impact the club and how we feel about ourselves, and maybe how Mikel feels about himself. Mikel has this impenetrable wall of a bit of a personality. He has this very and it's very engaging, and it's very it's allowed us to drive this project. But I often find people who you can't get through to, there's a bit of insecurity there. There's a reason they're not letting you in. Mikel will have his own insecurities, right? And these sorts of games, they have impact on everyone up and down the club in terms of confidence. So it's huge beyond the realms of just the fans.
It's like, if you go and look at Champions League winners over the years, there are very, very few who have won it with ease. They've always had to overcome some form of adversity. If we look at our Champions League campaign so far, right, it's been incredible. The group stages was fantastic. Walked it. Absolutely walked it. And we had some tough games there as well. PSV was easy. Real Madrid, take the fan emotion and put it to one side. It was easy. This is the first time we've had to come up through some adversity. And it's funny, right? We spoke about it on TCP Live, right? I fully expected us to lose to Real Madrid because of the institution, the ideology, who they are, and what they've done in the Champions League. It was nothing tactical. It was just the fear of Real Madrid, and we win that easily. And then PSG, me and George do the rewatch, and I'm very confident, nervous, but very confident that this is going to be a very good opportunity for us to get into the final, and we lose the game. There's a lot of things we could obviously talk about, but we ultimately lose the first leg. So now we're in a situation where, if you want to win it, you have to show some bottle in these moments. I'm sorry, but that is, I know it is Roy Keane, it is Yadar analysis, but genuinely go and look at the winners of the Champions League. They have to show some courage and fight when it's difficult. Like, even like Bayern Munich when they won in 2013, someone responded saying Bayern Munich 2013, they didn't really have to do much. But in the final, Dortmund pegged them back. They pegged them back, So you have to rise in this moment. And I'm sorry, I know it's one of those ones where, the players will feel it, what the fans are saying, etc. But you're a professional footballer. You have to rise in these moments. And what did Miles say to Ian Wright? He said, I want to play in the biggest moments. I want to play against the best players. That is the mentality that you have to have. And I know this is very Roy Keane, but honestly, if you have that mentality, this is how I see it, right? If Arsenal do not let that occasion get to them, because I know a lot of people have been to the Parc des Princes. It's one of the most hostile places to go to in Europe in terms of grounds, right? It is not easy to play in. If you can contain that atmosphere and you let your football play, I think we'll be in that final, genuinely. But once that occasion gets to you, like we've seen it at Newcastle before, we've seen it in other grounds, you then can't think tactically, you then can't utilize the principles. The principles go out the window. It's always your ability to calm the atmosphere first and foremost. If you can do that, then you put yourself in a very good situation of winning that game. It's what PSG did. Honestly, I went to the game. Before the game, the atmosphere was fantastic. 2 minutes in, they silenced the crowd, and they had that really good spell. So rise to the occasion, and we can do it.
Yeah, and I think the frustration for a lot of fans is they haven't seen us do that this season. So if we go and do that on Wednesday, it will be not new, but it will feel quite new that this Arsenal team that has done this. But let's look. We could go into the nerves of this, and they are there. Of course, they're there. But let's try and put some positive spin on this. George, give us the reasons why Arsenal, if they can contain the atmosphere, if they cannot give silly balls away, if they cannot let things get to us, the stuff probably we spoke about a lot on the rewatch last week from PSG. We know this Arsenal team, if you take emotion off this, if you take the importance of the game off this, have something for PSG. So what do we need to focus on heading over there this week?
Yeah, really specifically, we've done a couple of rewatches. I'm sure all the boys here have rewatched that first leg to death. And number one is I do not want Nuno Mendes to dictate anything from PSG's back line. Please make Paco be the first receiver. How do we do that? Kel Marino, mate, your role has to be switched. I want you to be the number 9, being the one over the top. And yes, Declan Rice needs to be one of those second DMs that is pressing the first trigger to stop the entry pass through the middle of the park and just force PSG long. Because if they're going to force them long into the channels, I am very confident that Arsenal deal with that situation. It is the difficulty when they played through the middle of the park for us and they sliced us open. That was when I felt, okay, now we're in trouble. But in terms of the changes out of possession that we need to that we need to see, number 1, Marino at number 9, being that's the person that's over the top. That's the ball that's being competed with, not Trossard. That technical security, that ability to bring the ball over the top when Raya needs to go long, that's going to be huge. Another one is having Declan Rice in left central midfield, not because I believe we necessarily just need his ability to run through teams, which, by the way, is huge against PSG, especially with the space out wide in their block. They don't mark that well. But the impact of having Thomas Partey in the middle of the park with Declan means the middle will be closed off from a pressing perspective. And lastly, mate, we did not make use of Hakimi's utter lack of a brain out of possession. And he is somebody that sees red and he just goes, and he does not have the blindside awareness. And I will even put Marquinhos into that category, that right-hand side. Arsenal need to use their left. We need to make sure that Martinelli is the one making those out-to-in runs and really putting pressure on that PSG block to really second guess. Make that side very weak and nervous, and it will inevitably give space on the opposite side for Saka to come inside. When you're so concerned about the out-to-in run, people will shift, and it will give space to Saka. So I want us to threaten left, and let's not use the right. I think we leaned into that in the first leg, and it makes sense. Our best players are on the right. I get it, guys. I really do. But when you look at the weakness in that defense, I'm sorry, Paco and Nuno Mendes are a lot better as a pair in defending wide channels than Marquinhos and Hakimi. So those are the 3 things I'm looking at. Marino number 9, having a little bit more of some presence to bring the ball out of the air and integrate ourselves. Having Declan and Thomas Partey be in the middle of the park to really cut that entry pass, forcing Paco to be the receiver and build up, not Nuno Mendes. And lastly, please, let's use Martinelli. I don't care what kind of form we're talking about. It's about the defense and the blindside awareness from Marquinhos and Hakimi, which is much poorer than Paco and Mendes. You do those 3 things, I really feel that Arsenal will have not just, this may sound arrogant, not really an easy, but a very comfortable win by doing those things. If we fail in those things, we're going to have a difficult night, because that's when the crowd will get up.
For sure. That's really well broken down. I think the only things I'd highlight is just to go back again, and you said it, but hammering this carries. Like, I really believe if we start to take the ball through them and are brave with it, from Thomas Partey, from Mars Lewis-Skelly, from Declan Rice, if we're brave on the ball, we will really hurt them. Because I look at Vitinha and João Neves, and it's a bit of a cliche, but these aren't big space defenders. These are small space defenders, and they can't keep up. The one thing I'm holding on to from this weekend, from an absolute pile of poo of a weekend, I won't swear, was Declan Rice's performance. That man is fired up. And even just that energy lifts you, it downgrades everyone else, it makes everyone feel small around him, and he can make us feel big. I think the big thing, before I come to you, Rohan, and maybe get your take on, ask you basically the same question as I asked George. I want to learn the lessons of the first leg in terms of the opening. I feel we got scared, but basically because we didn't touch the ball. And that may happen. That's understandable. But I'd really like us to focus on finding our feet in the game. However that happens, whether that's physically, whether that's mentally, whether that's just breathing on the pitch, whether that's just looking at each other, going like, we're okay, we're all good. I felt we got out under the lights and we panicked. And that was a lot of what happened in the first 20 minutes. However we get there, well, the guys in the changing room will know better than us what happened in those first 20 minutes, whether they didn't focus on a specific coaching instruction, whether it was just giving balls away, whatever. They'll know better than us, right? We can just guess from the outside. But I would love someone in that dressing room to grab them and go, guys, Whatever it is, that first 20 minutes, don't let that happen again. Because if we can set the tone for the game, not only do we set the tone for what we want to do in the game, we set the tone for the outside perspective in the ground. I think the first 20 minutes set the tone in the ground, and that's a massive thing for me going into this game away. And if we can set the tone for us, I think it's huge. But yeah, similar question if there's anything else you want to add.
That's why 1-0 keeps us so locked in. We don't need to go into this game in full throttle and think of this mindset, we need to get a goal now. It could be 60, 70 minutes and we've not got a goal and we're still in this if we can keep the game as it is. Obviously we don't want it to transpire like that, but we need to be calm. This game is there for us, potentially. Now, we did the TCP live, and I do think I know what Mikel was alluding to in terms of that tweak, and I think that allowed us to play a little bit better. But I think, Marino had a really good game, in my opinion, last week against PSG. But you see with Declan Rice in these games, where the onus is on pressing and creating chaos and not allowing them to rotate so freely through their right-hand side and our left-hand side. That's where the draw they had. It was the movement of Neves, Hakimi, Dembele dropping in meant that in situations Kivior and Saliba couldn't jump, so having space. Rice will be such a big difference. And that was the big driver as well in the game earlier in the season at the Emirates. And obviously they are different, but I just think Declan Rice, this is a game made for him. And also I think what we saw from Martin Odigard in the Bournemouth game in terms of rotating and moving off horizontally, if you look at that Bournemouth press, it's going to be very similar to the press that PSG are going to have. So I think Martin Odigard in that space could be very key, especially with Thomas Partey coming back, who, it's kind of like Declan Rice is a fantastic player. We've all spoke about him as a number 6 or as a number 8, different game states, etc. One of the things Declan Rice will not be able to do in this current version is when he's under pressure in a man-to-man press, turn and then face play. He will play the wall pass. He won't lose it, but he will give it to Saliba. Thomas Partey is someone who could turn, he can face play, and then the game opens up. And if you've got someone like Martin Odegaard as well in that space, that could really hurt PSG. And I think the factor of Mikel Merino as a number 9, pinning the 2 centre-backs as well, I think that's huge. And I don't want us to be afraid, and I know we won't be afraid to go along with David Raya as well. Like in the first leg, I don't know if you guys saw, but a lot of these indirect set pieces that we had from deep, Raya was pumping it towards the back post where we had that overload, and Merino won the first contact every single time. Every time. And now you add Declan Rice, who's high, you add Thomas Partey there with more height. We could really make joy of those second ball situations that occur from these as well. And this PSG team, they don't like that type of game. And that's why I think if we can play that sort of game, if we can press them hard, not allow them to have control, as George alludes to, PSG are dangerous when they're playing through you. That's how they scored that goal earlier last week, where Arsenal are trying to press hard. They want to get back into that pressing shape, but we're transitioning from a mid-block to a high press. And in that period where we're trying to get into shape, PSG kill us by playing through. And that's how they score the goal. So get ourselves set. Declan Rice will be key as your high number 8 on the left-hand side. And create some chaos, create some panic. Don't allow them to set up. And this PSG team, they get nervous as well. If you can really hurt them, if you can get a goal, trust me, we all watched them against Aston Villa. They're a young team. I remember Luis Enrique said earlier on this season, he felt this team is too naive to win a Champions League right now. He probably thinks differently now, but the fact that he said that then, I don't believe loads can change from when we played them in October to now in terms of maturity. So, that's...
Yeah, quick point before that. I think also having Trossard now, look, we're talking about a game we expect, and I want Mourinho for that game, but it may be a game we don't expect. And having Trossard on the bench to be able to change that game, I think is another factor here as well. Yeah, look, I think you're bang on to bring up PSG's kind of story, because obviously we're Arsenal fans, we focus on our story. They have a story of constantly choking in the Champions League. We have a different story because we weren't there, but they're in the knockout stages and going, different story. And if we can turn that tide, if we can get them thinking, oh my God, we're doing it again, you never know. We're not the only team in the world with a story, right? So I think we can use that against them as well. There's so much more to speak about the PSG game. I think probably the best way to do it is come to your questions. So we're going to come to your questions and go through, because we've got obviously tons and tons about the PSG game. So probably the rest of the preview is best to do that. If you want sort of priority access to the questions, you can do that by being a Discord member, which you become by being a Patreon or YouTube member. What do you get as a Patreon or YouTube member, please, Rohan?
Oh, you can get a plethora of content, ad-free main podcasts, rewatches, Scouted, Youth Pods, Data Pods, TSP Live, ad-free, just everything. And as you alluded to, Discord as well. So, yeah.
You're using very long words at the
What do
moment.
you mean, using very...
It was one you were saying. I saw a tweet. The
I
other day.
always use long words. What are you
were
talking about?
You were
was it?
cooking. You were saying words. I was.
Which one?
I can't. Where were
Yeah,
circumspect?
you know what it means? Oh, yeah,
I do know what it means. Yeah, but it's just
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a good word.
I've got
Very
this.
good word.
I don't know about you guys,
Very good
right? When I read, if I don't know a word, I'll write down in my notes. Like I've got a word list, and then like if I'm bored, I'll just
Do you try and slip it into conversation?
No, not like just on Twitter, not in real life. Like people thinking, "What are you talking about, mate?" If you're using those words, but yeah.
I definitely have a different hat, like professionally. I don't know if you guys do that, but like I get into my mode. Like if, for example, like when I was defending, I became an asshole with my word vocabulary.
Get the
It was
thesaurus
we need
out,
to
innit?
we need to extrapolate, and elucidate these key findings. Like I become that. Absolutely.
You got to. Let's start with Felix Moser on the Discord, which was, how would you, without having to take realism into account, line up against PSG? That's an interesting question. So yeah, let's do both things. If we had everyone available, how would we line up against PSG? And then let's do our lineups for. Actually, well, let's do it the other way around because there's more juice. Is there any disagreement with our current squad with Raya, Timber, Saliba, Kivior, Miles, Partey, Odigard, Rice, Marino, Martinelli, Saka? Any disagreement? Okay. How would we line up if we had everyone available? That is a really interesting question. George, I'll start with you.
The biggest question is the Martin Odegaard impact. Just to get into it right away, because I think there's not many differences fullback wise that I would want, especially in this tie. Obviously, Gabriel we would want back. He's our best, left center back. Period. And then other than that, I think it's for as good as Mikel Merino has been, I want Kai Havertz in this match. And, the stuff he adds in the press is pretty substantial. It is the Martin Odegaard question. I still would do it because of my belief that the press wins us this game. And I feel that it is more likely Arsenal don't become a new team in possession, and it is more likely they become the same team out of possession. So in terms of that bet, I would keep Martin Odegaard, and it would be that kind of mentality from myself. But I think that's the biggest question. And do you do something a little bit crazy as far as hoping that, maybe Kai can do that role and you have Mikel Merino be a 9 still? Or do you mix Trossard with, Kai Havertz? There are questions there, but just for me, I'll reiterate, I'm leaning towards making sure that we can be the people we know to be out of possession, than trying to project some crazy galaxy brain and change what we've been in possession all season. That, for me, I'll use the window to do. I think it's much more likely with what we have to be the best with what we know.
Yeah.
Tom, yes, you centre forward shifts, Rohan?
Yeah, I think it's that team,
I agree.
Gabriel's our best out and out defender. Kai Havertz up front, and I agree with George in terms of the press. And another word for you, Alex, sacrosanct. That is what our out of possession. That is what out of possession work is for Mikel. And I genuinely think that's all the changes that I'll be doing. And yeah, I think that would actually.
We're all learning, guys. We're all learning. Let's go with this one from Nindo. What percentage do you give to Arsenal going through against PSG? Also, prediction for the other side of the semi-finals.
That other semi-final was so good, honestly.
Yeah.
I
don't know. Let's start with let's start with Inter Barca. I do think Barca's. I can't watch a performance like Lamine Yamal's and not think he'll pull something out.
It's right at home though.
Yeah, but what a joke that guy is. So I think Barca will go through there because it feels pretty even. I think they just needed a difference maker, and he feels like the guy to do it. I would probably go with Barca, and then for us, percentage.
The odds are against us, for sure. I think you're a betting man. I don't think you bet on Arsenal. I know we are very optimistic Arsenal fans, but I genuinely do think we're going to beat them. Just got that feeling.
I was going to go the opposite, mate. I'll just flat out say it. I give us a 65% chance.
Really?
Of going through. Yeah, I believe that we did something pretty wrong in the first leg. I know we had some differences. I did not agree with the Trossard thing up top. I really worried about, I know we can create through different areas. I think it's really important to push this PSG team back with a Mikel Merino type of center forward. And I think that the impact on the press is so huge. I believe if we do the things that I've mentioned in this pod, I give us a 65% chance of going through, because I do believe that we are this PSG team's kryptonite in a lot of ways. I have a much more difficult time predicting the other draw. I'll be really honest with you, because for me, Inter are the next best defensive team left in the competition. And then for me, Barca, it's not just that they have brilliant moments, their best attackers can run. And that's the biggest thing that I think equalizes the Inter defensive thing. So I'll be honest with you. That's probably when I might go on the bench. I just want Barca to win because I think that's a better matchup if we were to go through. But as far as actually predicting what could do it, I'll be really honest with you, mate. It's going to be on the day. Who do I feel has the best game plan? Like, can Inter out-Inter Barca, or can Barca out-Barca Inter? And that's kind of my debate. I'll lean to Barca just to not be a annoying bench sitter. I just think the type of season Rafinha has had is something that, with Yamal, who we all know about, but Rafinha is having a Ballon d'Or charge this season. And I think that will just edge, despite Inter's brilliant defensive setup. I just don't believe in Thuram and Martinez to really come through over two legs.
I think I give us 52% chance.
All right, then.
Like, just...
Why not 51
I think,
then?
Because 51 would be almost fence sitting. I would never do that, Rohan. I just think it will depend. Basically, after 10 minutes, I'll give you a solid answer. I would be able to say after 10 minutes, either we're going through or they're going through. I just need to feel it. I think before there, if I see the boys and they've come out and I need to see the atmosphere. I need to see everything. I think 65, like, I get it, but I just think we're ignoring going to France and that atmosphere and how ready they're going to be. And if we can deal with that, if we are dealing with that in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, I'll be like, I think we'll be okay here. But if we're falling apart, that will worry me. So going into it, I give us a just going through. Just.
Oh, I need this challenge so much. I need it. I think I'll give ourselves 55%. I tell you what, if Arsenal handle the occasion, I'd ramp it up to 65, 70. Yeah.
This is my point. If genuinely, if after 10, 15 minutes, if we're playing our football, I really back us to go through.
The Newcastle game, the return leg at St James's Park, mate, they scored in like 2 minutes and it was offside. I thought, yeah, we ain't winning this. Bro. We're not winning this. Yeah,
bro. It wasn't even the goal. It was like the first. There was a chance before that from Isak.
Oh, the one that he slapped on the bar. Yeah. I was like, yeah,
we're out. I knew immediately we're out because we weren't controlling that. So for me, it's all about the opening. As I said earlier, it's all about the opening 20 minutes. Let's do this question. Ash on Discord says, if White has to play, they're all very good on the Discord. They put Q ... It's really good. Well done, guys. If White has to play versus PSG, are we cooked? He looks so unfit.
No, I think it's been a bit overboard. Look, I'm a fan of Ben White, but it's been understandable for me to see why he's stiff. Like, this is his third start of the season. And but regardless, like, this is a very good player who was with if you gave him 5 or 6 90s full throttle, guys, we're talking about the best right back in the league form. That's what he is when he's in form. So I think this we're cooked mentality is not 100% for me, because a big part of this game won't be the 1v1s. It's cutting through Arsenal. It's very rare that I've seen them 1v1 and we need to rely on those opportunities. Like for me, the biggest issues in the first leg was those through ball passes and making sure our center was blocked off. That for me was when Arsenal were really vulnerable, but I don't really feel that we ever got into a position in which it was truly 1v1. Like, because PSG's front line aren't elite pace like the Kylian Mbappe. So for me, I definitely wouldn't say cooked. I think I would prefer Timber, no doubt, because this is a guy that's been informed and, is one of the best, not one of, I'm going to go further, the best 1v1 lockdown defender in Europe. So undoubtedly I would like that. But I mean, Ben White also gives me more. I mean, you're talking about Ben White in this game. He's going to give you a lot more Saka inside, and Nuno Mendes doesn't like that either. So for as much as people want to be like, I don't know what Ben White's going to be like against Kvaratskhelia, what do you think Nuno Mendes is going to be like with Saka inside and Ben White consistently on the outside? That's an equal nerviness from both teams. So yeah, I just would edge Timber, but I don't think that we're cooked. I think that's a little bit far.
I have this thing about, as fans, and people know exactly what, if you listen to me enough, you know exactly what I'm about to reference. We, as a defensive performance, we overrate 1v1 moments. People like, it's the Pablo Mari effect. People knew I was going to say that. He was bad that day, but people are like, it's the worst defensive performance I've ever seen at the Emirates because he got cooked twice by Lukaku in a specific 1v1 moment. I think people are looking at that. I think it was Ouattara on Ben White and going, he's absolutely that can happen. If you get your footwork wrong, if you're not on your toes for in one moment, that gets done. Oh, he was terrible all afternoon. He wasn't great. I'm not saying he was great. He's not fit. I don't think it would be that bad. Like I think we're focusing on one moment where he knocks it past him. I think he gets it wrong basically. Because I remember it was actually my week off. I was watching 22-23 highlights, moving like Rohan, really moving like Rohan. And I was watching him back in 22-23. If we can get him back to that leanness and physical quality, mate, he is an athlete. He is a proper athlete. So don't forget that.
He's a quality player. It's just, as George alludes, he's a bit stiff at the moment. He needs lubing up. If Ben White is to play on, oh god, yeah. But he does, doesn't he? He needs greasing up to get those joints moving. And
you said it, mate. If you want to lube up Ben White, that's on you, mate.
I'm sure his missus does.
He wants to grease up. Oh god. Okay, there's so much there.
You're lucky we're an hour and 6 minutes in, mate.
But he's right now. He's been out of the game for a while, and he's had 3 starts. He just needs a bit more, fluidity in his joints. So, a bit more
lube. Let's move to X. One from Thabs who says, do I have to continue to watch Arsenal if we lose on Wednesday? Fair enough.
What I will say is, don't go on the timeline if we lose. It's going to be...
don't go on social media.
It's going to be so toxic. I will not be saying anything. I will not...
We've got to do it. Do you want to go on the insurrection?
I'm going straight to bed if we don't win.
Me and George got to do this reaction, bro.
If we win, will you come on the IR?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll come on.
Okay, so this is George.
For this game, negotiation rooms. If we win, I'll come on.
This is the thing. Okay. No. But obviously, this is. I think I said this on TTB Live. Look, obviously, we're focusing on all the things that could go wrong. We're focusing on the tactical matchups. We're looking at we need to do this, need to do this. We're putting all of our energy into please go through. We might. We're one game away from the Champions League final. Yeah,
you will see full-on passion merchant me. I'll be on that. It might not get monetized. Okay. Just be wary of that. It might not get monetized.
That's fine, mate. That's fine.
Yeah.
But this is the thing.
Is like about lubing up Ben White. I'm quite dangerous with, especially being online.
Christ. Good Lord. Let's not go there. You're not coming on this reaction if you want to do that.
Anything wrong with it?
No.
Everyone has their own proclivities. If that's what you want to do, Rohan. It's a free country. No, but let's be serious. Like we are really close because we're 1-0 down. We're not considering this. We're also potentially a game away from the Champions League final, and that's incredibly exciting.
Mate, my last 30 seconds, and it's a galvanizing classic George dressing room talk. You have the ability to make history. That needs to be the message for these boys. when you go and you want to approach it, I know I've talked about in this pod how we've built it up to be this occasion, but I would like to lean into it where you need to remember the kind of players that you are and the respect that you have, because this is a team, by the way, that is young, just like you. They are not better than you. They are not. I'm sorry. I don't care if that sounds arrogant. They are not better than you. You have the potential to play and be yourselves, and you do that, you will be in the final. You have the potential to make history. You have the potential to be the players why you joined. Declan, why you chose Arsenal over Manchester City is to win moments like this, and you have just done it against Real Madrid. You belong here. Stop thinking you don't and act like it. That's it.
I was going to ask another question, but it feels like the end of the podcast. Closing thoughts after George's team talk. I think it's a massive, this is such coaching speak, and Mikel does it all the time, but it's a massive opportunity. It is and I don't know. I would really be upset if somehow in the future in Mikel Arteta's autobiography or Rice's autobiography, what they spent all this week talking about is like, they're grey and I would love to know that they spent this week going, look at this, you can beat them. Look at this movement from Hakimi, you can exploit that. When we have Marino back, we can do this. Look at Pacho, look at what all those difficulties and whatever. Watching goals of them conceding from set pieces, all those sorts of things. I really don't want us to go into this with the fear. What I want us to go into it with is the idea that we have to manage this game. The Real Madrid game was a slightly different thing, but I think this is as an atmosphere. We have to manage that. But if we do that, and for me that is the first sort of 10, 15 minutes setting the tone, there's so much to exploit in this. There's so much to exploit. I also do feel players like Saka, players like Rice, players like Miles, we don't have all of them in the team, and I wish we had Gabriel available. I think Kai Havertz might be someone like that. I think they will believe they could do something. It's just really important that they have a great night. This maybe something we actually didn't mention earlier in the tactical side of things. Getting the ball out to Saka a little bit more is going to be absolutely crucial in this game because we really struggled in the first game. But yeah, overall, this is a massive opportunity to put our stamp on them, to go out there. It's one goal.
Exactly, it's one goal.
One goal. It's literally one goal. So yeah, it's not just delusion and Arsenal fans being hopeful. There are so many ways we can get at this PSG team. There's ways they can get at us. Of course there are. But, as long as we've worked on it this week, first 10 minutes go by, I'll be pretty confident.
See you in Munich.
Go on, Rohan. Final thoughts.
Oh, I can't wait for this. I'm so nervous, but I can't wait for it. Maybe it's copium, but I just think we're going to turn up and we're going to do something. That's what you meant. I think if you can settle the crowd, we'll win this game. Imagine that as well at the Parc des Princes, where we lost the Champions League final as well, and going back there and getting goosebumps actually thinking about it. I just feel like, it's the crowd for me. Get the crowd switched off as much as possible, play the game, and we'll win. We genuinely will win. And I do think the Thomas Partey factor is big. I'm hoping the rusty game that he had against Bournemouth was just getting back into it and he'll be ready for that PSG match. But yeah, my feeling right now is Declan Rice is going to be the difference maker. It's just made for him this game in terms of that role, in terms of how PSG want to play, and what it is with the Champions League as well. And we go away from the intricacies, and we spoke about it on TCB Live about the certain minor details. But ultimately, if Arsenal win their key 1v1 battles, we'll win this game. That's what the Champions League's down on, those fine margins. We had two big moments in the first leg, we didn't take them. If we can create a few more at the Parc des Princes and we limit them, that'll be enough. And
Mikel said after Bournemouth, we certainly created a lot of frustration, anger, disappointment. It's the time now to show our courage, our resilience, go there using everything that we're feeling right now to put an amazing performance there and win the game and be in the final. That fire in your belly now has to be there. It's time to step up in Paris and have an amazing match and win it. And there's many things I don't know about this team, and there's many question marks I have about this team. But I believe this team has an unbelievable quality, and there are specific individuals, the Rices, the Miles, and the guys I mentioned, who will do that. Whether that makes a difference, I think it could. Whether that makes a difference, who knows?
What's your prediction?
I know they will. I know they will. Okay, if I have to take away my 10-minute caveat.
As a neutral,
2-1
just
2-1 Arsenal, and we win on penalties.
with David Raya.
Yeah.
I don't want it to go to penalties, that's for sure. Donnarumma just seems massive. Like, well, he is massive. He seems it is.
2-1 Arsenal, win on penalties.
3-1.
Yeah, I thought it was. Oh yeah, in 90.
Yeah, I think so.
I said 2-1. I'm gonna stick with 2-1. I just don't think it'll get to. I think we do it in extra time. I think it's that's just where I'm at.
And they owe us for this. Oi, if any of you are listening, any Arsenal players are listening, you owe us for this Premier League campaign. You owe us. So just turn up.
How many podcasts on the back of draws and defeats?
Do you know what I mean? How many Sundays have we sat here and gone, do you think we can catch Liverpool? Please save us. Thank you, boys, for being here. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. Drop us a comment on YouTube if you enjoyed. Let us know your score prediction, etc. We will see you all on Wednesday after the game. No matter what happens, we'll be okay.
We'll be immune.
We'll be okay. We just might need a few weeks to recover if we don't make it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, George and Rohan.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks so much for watching and listening. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.